Okay, all right. I hope I'm audible enough. So we'll wish somebody to confirm that audible to your sides. Okay, let me check who is in the call.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have 5 in the call. But we hope to also start the session as early as possible because we would wish also to have like 1 hour session. But sometimes when the session goes beyond, we'll try as much as possible to stay within the limit of time. Right. We have Bobby, Morris, Ryan, Duku. Both welcome. You're all welcome to the call. So we're just starting in some few minutes. So can you be able to see the screen or maybe I haven't shared? Let me just share the screen. Right. Or, or maybe somebody can confirm, is the screen visible in your sides? If not, I think it's loading. You will tell me whenever it starts. I think it should now be visible in your side. Maurice, your hand is up. Okay, let me. If I do this, I think it will require me to share with that. Let me share again. Da, 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 da. Okay, let me share the slides. I think it's better for me to first share the slides. Then, once we jump into the demo part, it's going to be a bit better for us. So, welcome, Ngetich. You are in the call. Joseph, you're welcome. So, okay, I think today we hope that internet won't be an issue like last time when we met. So, internet was one of the challenges that we faced. And not so power can be one of the challenges that we might face as well. But let's hope everything goes well. So, I've also shared my slide. So, somebody to confirm that my slide is now visible to your side. Okay, let's react using the chat. If you can see the slide. Okay, thank you so much. I think at this point we are going to start the session. We'll just give it 1 more minute for anyone who will maybe. Okay, saying my slide's not visible. I've shared my first slide. Maybe it's still loading on your sides. Uh, Teach, maybe you can confirm from your side if the slide is visible to your side. Because from my side, I think everything is showing that's okay. Anyone confirm, please?
Not visible.
Not visible. Okay. Okay, what's the problem then? Yeah, somebody has confirmed that's visible. I think you're now good to start. All right, so my name is Brian Kimboy. I'm a software engineering student in Kirinyaga University, also a Microsoft Learn student ambassador and a software developer. Welcome all of you to C#.NET series. So I hope that for anyone who was with us last week, we were able to like give an introduction to C#. So we learned what is C#. We went even to introduce what are namespaces. We learned what are classes and objects and the structure of how C# is written. So if you missed that session, I will be sharing the link to the recording so that you can be able to get in touch or just be the place whereby we had reached, because it's very important for you to understand the fundamental of like how a language is before maybe understanding more and more concepts that comes ahead of it. We introduced C sharp, and today we are going to say something on C sharp type system. Um, Last week when we met, I told you that C sharp is very strict in type checking. So for instance, if you've ever written a language like Python or JavaScript, you will find yourself that you could write something without typing it. Like for instance, you are writing something like an integer, you won't like key in to verify that indeed it's an integer, or maybe specifying it that's a string. But with C sharp, you really have to type those things manually. So I'm first going to first give an introduction what is a data type, because when you talk about type system, it's all about data types, and that's something that should come into your mind, especially if you're somebody who is starting to code today in a programming language. You're wondering like what are data types and what their usage is. So a data type specifies a type of data that a variable can store. So we'll be able to see what's a variable and what it plays in, what role does it play in programming. So we'll be talking about, let's say if somebody says int a is equals to 7, what's a variable and what does it help? But the key points here is that it defines the data. Like for instance, it defines if that variable can store something that's an integer, that's a numbers. It can store something that's a string. Like for example, your name is a string, a boolean, that is either true or false. It also specifies operations that can be performed with that data. So for instance, arithmetic operations can be performed only with numbers. Like for instance, I can add numbers, multiply numbers, or divide them. So we have also the type system categorization or categories. So we'll be talking about the two main type systems in C sharp, that is value types and reference types. So these will be like our main topics that we shall be touching on today. So we shall be able to like understand both of them, so that as we proceed to writing more C sharp, you'll be in a good condition to write them better. So we also have the memory management. In programming, you have to manage that memory in your laptop. So for instance, when you're writing a program to solve something, so you should be able to be able to manage that memory well, because writing some codes that have some bugs or have some issues, you might find yourself that you're using much of your memory. So by this, I mean your RAM. If you have a 4 GB RAM and you're writing code that not optimized to perform certain operation, so you will find that your your code might not run as expected, or it might even just stuck or not performing the role that it intended to do. So these data structures that we want to talk about as we begin, those are called stacks and heaps. So stacks are mostly used by the value types, and heaps are used by reference types. So when we talk about stack, it's more easy to use. We will be talking about local variables and global variables. So these value types, whenever they are initialized or used, and maybe maybe you get out of the scope, they will always be like deleted from the stack itself. So it's very kind of easy to use. But this others known as the reference types, they use heaps, and heaps they always remain entirely in your application. So it always takes like much of your space in your system. So also we have another key point is that the type safety. So if you've been writing a language like, for instance, JavaScript, so there's no type checking, but that's always a problem that comes with writing of JavaScript. So that's why TypeScript was introduced, so that people can be able to write everything explicitly. Like, for instance, you are defining something as an int, you have to indicate it, say that that compiler is going to understand what variable you're coming in with. So these things, we shall be able to practice with them. Okay, let's proceed. I hope I'm still audible and you can hear me well. Can react with those emojis. Okay, type system categories. So the type system categories that I've mentioned before, that is value types and reference types. So we shall be coding these things today, one-on-one, and I hope that at the end of the session, we will all have understood it and you'll be able to also experiment by writing them on your Visual Studio codes, like trying these things out as we practice for the exams, that's the fundamental exams. So it's key for you also to doing these things also after the session, because you'll be preparing for yourself for that certification as well. So the value types. So this only contains its own data, does not refer to certain different data, because I told you that once you use a value type, for instance, a byte is always the smallest of all. You have the integer, the float, double, decimal, boolean. We shall look into that. The reference types that I want to mention, they are very important. They seem different than value types. This includes the classes. So C# is an object-oriented programming. So we have classes, interfaces, we have arrays, delegates. Those strings that I told you your name is a string, it's also a reference type. So we shall be talking about what do we mean by reference types. That it means that the data that is stored is always referring to something else. Like, for instance, when you initialize a class, it can be referenced by different objects. So that's kind of referencing or the reference types. So we shall also be looking into reference type once we reach the demo. I think at this point we shall be jumping into the demo with our Visual Studio Code. So allow me to share my other screen. So before that, I want to take you to the documentation, because as promised earlier, I promised that as we shall be touching on C#, we shall be also looking into the documentation. So allow me to see those links, or maybe meanwhile I can let's hope this opens very quick. And I can just type here C#. C# types the docs. So documentations are very important because they always make you like understand something in detail. I think this is the first one, should the one I should be using. So it makes you understand something in detail, because whoever is explaining to you is the one who created the language. So, and also I shared this document with you. So the document contains different links to different resources, so which plays an important role to understanding these things. Let me wait that one, because this directed me to other types. Let me wait for this. I think this is okay. Yeah, these two links are very important. We shall be using them. Yeah, once you hit this URL, you'll be able to see how the documentation is well structured. You can see that we started with getting started, some program structure, and you see the next part of it that we are learning is the type system. So we learned about the namespaces, classes. So we haven't learned about these other parts, but there's no problem. As we get to also uncover more, we shall be learning about these other parts. I wanted to go direct to, I think, second link. Yeah, the built-in types that we have. So here are the types that I was mentioning about. Like for instance, you want to understand the value types. You can see we have those Boolean. So we talked about system namespace. System namespace or namespaces in C# tries to organize different classes. For instance, Boolean is available in system namespaces. It's available in system.boolean. So Boolean is a class. So it has a Boolean is something that's either true or false. We have a byte. A byte is always the smallest of all. We have the sign bytes, characters, decimals. So we have a lot of them and sign long. So we shall be looking to this in the code. We also have these reference types that we've mentioned. These are like objects, string, dynamics, thing they've forgotten to add the class and several others. So once you hit the documentation, these are the things that you can be able to find them and try and read more about them. So you can see when we talk about types, we have two types. We have value types and we have the reference types. So if I open the value types, you see they are trying to explain each and every value type in detail. And if I open the reference type, expanding them, they try and explain them in detail. So for us, I'll be explaining this in our Visual Studio rather than explaining them in the documentation. Okay. So for that, let me I think I shared the raw screen. Let me share the screen that I'll be using to code itself. So I'll be sharing the first screen. Yeah. So somebody can confirm also that you can now see my screen. Somebody in the call, confirm.
Yeah, I can see
Morris,
the
your hand is
screen.
up. All right, thank you. So, so I've tried to organize this code. Okay, let me just close some tabs. So last week when we were talking about these sessions, we talked about the Solution Explorer, and then we talked about our the normal Explorer. So for us, I would be writing or trying to make use of the Solution Explorer because it tries to organize our projects and solutions very well. So I'm going to just also go to Solution Explorer. So I created some minutes. So this one folder, that series. So I'm going to create one project, one folder. Let me call it type system. So under hello, I've created a folder known as type system. And inside this, I want to write now the two types of, I want to create the solutions of the reference types and the value types. So the first solution that we're going to create, so we are going to create a project. So I'll be using the UI because I think this is a bit easy. So you see this plus icon over here, just click over it. So it's going to open the palette. I don't know why in the first instance, okay, it's here, the palette. So, and we're writing the console apps. The console app is the writing of apps that mostly are experimentals, or you are trying to learn some concepts. So they're always empty files. So I'll call this value. So inside type system folder, I'm going to create a project known as value types. So we shall learn about value types and then later on learn about reference type. So just click OK, and everything will be created. So if I expand this folder, you see we have a solution created known as value types. If I expand, it has other dependencies of the project, but we are more interested in the program.cs. So it's quite some few challenges maybe creating it, but once you create it, you see it's just easy for you to be here. The first thing that you always see is this program console.writeline hello world. This I always use to test if your file is working. Something else, if you want to use this other explorer, you can see that mostly when you're using Solution Explorer, remember to refresh the first folder, the traditional folder that you're using. So you see inside type system, we have value types, and also you can have the program.cs, but I'm not going to use this. So I'm going to use this as a C# developer. It's always good to use the Solution Explorer. So it always comes with the IntelliSense and that. So it also supports your developments while using the Solution Explorer. So first thing that I'll be trying to do is try and list ls to see where am I. So you see I'm supposed to get in the type system. So change directory to type system. So inside type system, we see we have the value types, cd2 value types. Okay, let me list and see what's available in. So you can see you have the bin folder. You have the object program CS. So let me just run this code. First of all, I'm going to clear, then make my terminal up there. Nice. So how to run a C# program? We say it is .NET run. Very simple. So when running a program, what always happens is the program is going to build. When you build a program, it means that you're generating a machine code. So for instance, what we mentioned is that this is a human readable code, but now you have to convert this human readable code to a machine readable, or what a machine can understand. A machine understands ones and zeros, and that can be represented by writing of this assembly language. So if I open the C# types, you can see this new folder known as bin that has been created. So this folder is the one that has the assembly code, the one that a machine can understand. So this process where I'm writing .NET run is known as compilation. And you can see once the code, you combine the code, compile the code, you get the program output, hello world. So let's dive into what we are to learn today. Okay, so this how C# is now written nowadays. In the other days, you always have to write your C# code by first writing the hierarchy codes before reaching this point. So to make sure that maybe you understand about that, I'll be writing also code in the other way. Maybe I'll be able to mention all the hierarchy from writing the class, coming up down until writing the main method, just like how you should be able to write C programming. If you've learned that, be able to learn C, C++, Java. So it's called top level statements. So for this, to learn that, I'll be able to. So first of all, before even going to that point, I want to introduce the variables. Say that before we get into even learning many things, it's good for us to understand what's a variable. So I almost even jump to going much. So there's something known as commenting in C#. Commenting in C# is something that a compiler will always ignore. So these two lines that I've added over here, let me just make sure my screen is visible to your side. So these two lines makes this code not readable to the compiler. So this is commenting. So this is single line commenting of code. So if, for instance, I had several lines of this code, okay. So if I have like had several lines of code like this, I might want to comment them by using the / and then close them down here. So this is multiple commenting of code. So it's also very important for you to, as a programmer, to know like, how do I comment a code? So let's go back. So commenting helps to make sure that some code does not run, or also documenting your code so that you can be able to understand some things. So let's say adding some notes to certain code. So let's talk about variable before we proceed to understanding more about value types. So a variable can, like for instance, I want to print my age. So first of all, you have to understand like an age is an integer. It's like a number, an integer. So you can say integer, give the name age is equals to, so maybe I'm now 24 years old, and then we have it like that. So age, this name age is a variable, and a variable stores something. So if you did your algebra right, or yeah, I think it was algebra, it's all about writing some assignment to something. I'm saying that this 24 will be stored in this value like age. So once like I want to access this 24, I'll be using age to access it. So integer is the data type itself. You can see here it says system.int32. It shows that it's an integer type. So if I want to make sure this is printed, just write console. So console is a class that's available in system namespace. So console dot, so most use it write line, and then over here we have two ways we can be able to print. I want to bring some a concept known as how to use to concatenate a string with a variable. So we have the old way of writing. I can say like my age of how to write. So I could like say console.writeLine. I want to output saying my age is this age. So let's see how this first works, and then I'll show you the new way of how to write concatenation. Concatenation is like adding a string to a variable. So you can see my age is 24. So I've just said that this string, or yeah, this is a string. I think I have not even introduced what's a string. So this is like a string, but I want it to be out to come in my output plus the variable itself. But the new way of how to write that is using string formatting. String formatting. So I shall be using string formatting because it's something that's most used by many people nowadays. So you can say console dot write line. So to use string formatting, first of all, you have to use the $sign. You have to put the two quotes and say that my age is. Now I'll have to use the curly brace and then have my variable age over here. And then always remember to end your program with this semicolon. Without it, your code will always complain. You see, when I hover around here, you see expected some semicolon. C# is always good because we have that extension that we installed known as the C# dev kit. So it's very important. So you see there's a difference between the two of them. So this is the new way how people write C# code. So it's more urban rather than this old way school of like concatenating using the plus sign. So I'm saying my age is, when I hover over the age, you are told that's a local variable. So it's available for usage when I'm trying to print my age. So let me run the code .NET run. You see my age is 24. So that's a variables, and I found it very important to start today's session with understanding of variables. So let's now dive into more into variables, and then we are going to talk about the value types, and then we proceed to reference types. So I'm going to be very quick in writing this program because it's something that we did last week. So class program. So class program. So a class is like a way of how to organize your things. Everything in C# is always object oriented. So I'm going to create Okay, wait a minute. I think I'm also moving so fast to creating reference types. So let me do this a bit better by just not writing top level statements to first just introduce these value types. But when we'll be talking about reference types, because we'll be talking about classes, it will be good for me to use the top level statements. But for this, so we've talked of some value types, like for instance, we have, let me write them here. We have value types. So they are stored in a stack. Okay. So what we shall be using is we shall be discussing is a byte. You see all of this. We have the short, you have the int, long, float, double, decimal, character, boolean, struct, enum. So we have so many of them. But now let's now begin with a byte. So a byte is always the smallest of all. You can see here we are told that it's always 8 bits. It starts from 0 to 255. So any value that starts with 0 to 255 is a byte. So how can we know that something is a byte? We can say that, let's say console. Console is very important because you will be writing this more often. So you can say console, and then we say, I want to know the rate or the range where byte starts. So I'm going to use the $sign. I can say byte range. So byte range starts from, so I have to access the byte dot. So we have things known as methods. We shall be discussing about them. So the minimum value to byte dot see maximum value. So let us prove that indeed it starts from 0 to 255. Maybe I was lying. So let's confirm. And you can see how I written this program. I use the string formatting. First, the $sign, the double quotes, write your part of the string, and then attach something that's a variable is attached in the curly brace. Then you continue to a string, and then you place your variables in the curly brace. So you can see in our output, you see the byte range is between 0 to 255. If, for instance, I would want to, let's say, come here and say a byte, let's say my byte. So my byte is a variable. So you can name your variable as you want, but in C#, it's always good to name variables this way. So my byte, so I can say now my byte is 256. So let's see what happens. See over here, you see that 256 cannot be converted into a type. So there's some problems. So you cannot store a byte of like something that's more than 255 inside a byte, because my byte is a variable is more than 255, so it cannot be stored. But if I were to store something like 255 over here, and then just do a console statement, I can say console.log, my byte is equals to this byte. This is going to be possible. So I think we've touched on the byte. So let's go to the second one. So we have the second one was the short. You can see now I can be able to print my byte. So I will be commenting these other parts of the code, and this code is available in GitHub. I hope that also be sharing them so that you can be able to have them in your access. So let's now talk about shorts. So for this, we'll be moving fast to understand the range of a short. Where does it start and where does it stop? So just say console dot write line, and then say what Copilot is telling me is what I should be having. Let me just accept that. But it's almost similar to what I had written before. I'm saying that short range starts from maybe short dot minimum. And it's very important for you when writing C#. When you put that dot, you see the IntelliSense that you get. So you'll be able to see so many methods that you can be able to use with short. But for me, I want to have the minimum over here. I've said maximum, so it should be dot, then minimum value, and then I want to find also the maximum value. For this, let me clear my terminal using the clear command, and then .NET run. So once you find yourself that I'm so fast in something, please let me know. So you see a short starts from negative 32,000 to positive 32,000. So this means that it takes also the negative numbers and the positive numbers. So this is the range of a short. So let's talk about int, because I think int is easy because we've touched on it. So the int, so int is 32 bits. So you can realize that as we go, the byte was 8 bits. The short was 16 bits. So you see, the more we increase, like we are going up. So now the int is 32 bits. So let me write something about int. So I want to just console. So console.writeLine int range. So it will be int dot minimum value to int dot maximum value. Let's run the code. So the int range starts from something, it's quite a huge number, even a million. So sometimes we mostly use integers because most of the computation that we are doing is always between this million. So you see something negative 2 million and some digits, and then to positive 2 million and some digits. It will be good for us to know, so that when you want to declare some variables or writing something, it will be good for you to understand them. So next thing that we'll be talking about is the long. You see the long even have more values, but we are going to confirm by using the console dot writeLine. So the long range starts from long dot minimum dot long dot maximum value. So this will be very quick because it's something that's repeatedly. So .NET run. Okay, now you can see that's long. So for instance, if you had a program that you wanted to store something that is more than 2 million, you see you can use long. So long starts from, it's even, I don't know, it's a trillion or what, even it's too big. So if you are dealing with this kind of computation, which is not possible, sometimes you might find it, but it's not, it's rare for you to find that. So you see, these are very large number. And I think this is the largest of all when talking about positive numbers and negative numbers. We can talk of another one known as unsigned short. So we've talked about short, and we saw that short from this side. Where was it? Let me just minimize this. Short was taking the negative numbers and also the positive numbers. So let's see what does unsigned short does. So sometimes we may want to restrict your code to this kind of value types. So you can say your console dot writeLine. So also want to understand how, okay. So we can say, so units, the unsigned int. So it's unsigned int dot minimum value to, and then to unsigned unsigned short to maximum value. So we want to understand like which range does that fall. So it will be a very smaller number as well. So you see, only this, it takes positive numbers. It doesn't take a negative number. So if you are dealing with a system whereby you want a user to provide you something that is not a negative, you might restrict your declaration by using the unsigned. So this means unsigned, yeah, it's here. It means unsigned short. It means that you should only be providing something that's a positive value and beyond. So that's also mean that we have the unsigned int and unsigned long. So for that, I'm just going to bring the code over here because it's something repeated so that you can be able to see. So this is the unsigned int and this is unsigned long. So you see the values keep on increasing. If it's unsigned short, it's a smaller value. Unsigned int more, and then unsigned long is even bigger. So we are done with the most of them, which are numbers. Let's talk about floats, decimals, and doubles. So today's session is a bit easy, but it's also good for you to understand like all these types. So I'm going to talk about a float. So a float is 32-bit, but now we are talking about things that have decimal places. So in our discussion, we've been seeing some code that doesn't have a decimal place. But for this, how do you even declare a float? So you say a float, let's say I want a variable known as my float. So this depends on how you want to name it. So you see it's equals to, so this is known as assigning. You can say it's equals to 3.14. And then you have to add an F to mean that this is a float. So it's a small f or a capital F. It doesn't matter. So, but you see when I hover, okay, it's telling me this is unnecessary because I have not used it. You have to write like console dot okay, right line. So my float. So whenever this, it's like it takes that initialization of what I've given, so it's going to be a float. So how do you write it? Using the small f at the end or the capital F, the small or the capital. So for this, these are known as the suffix, by the way. So these terms are good to know. So that's known as a suffix. So, and in our English, we know that a suffix is something that comes after. But if we were writing a float, let's say F before, that could be called a prefix. I think that was how it was called. So we want to know the minimum values and the maximum values for this. Okay, for that, I'm going to also grab the code and have it here. So it's also the same thing. Console.writeLine, float range is float.minimum value to float.maximum value. Let's see the range of it. The compilation happens. You see the float range, it's -3 point some values, and then also to positive numbers of the same. We have a double, and we'll be able to come and understand like what's the difference between a double and this. So a float is 32-bit, but now a double is 64-bit. So it's like we are climbing the ladder like from the smaller one to the bigger one. So also if you want to check the range of a double, you have to write the console.writeLine double. So I'm adding these strings so that you can be able to see them. Even without them, it's also going to run, but it's also always good to attach something that can make it easy for you to read. So running the code. So you see the double range starts from, it's a big number than the other one. And also the last one that we'll be talking about that has decimals is the actual decimal number. So the other one that we have is the decimal. So the decimal is 128 bits. So this will tell you that this is going to have a very big value. So console.writeLine decimal range is going to be a decimal dot minimum value to that. Let me print and then you can see all of them. So we shall be talking about what's the difference between a float, a double, and a decimal. So you can see now a decimal has even a big number that even I can't be able to mention. So let's discuss what's the difference between a float, a double, and a decimal. So because somebody might also ask a question like, when do I use all this? So we use them because we want to have some precision. So if you're good in maths, sometimes you are told to return something that has certain decimal numbers. For instance, something that has 4 decimal numbers, 8 decimal numbers. So this can be always be used in certain cases. So for instance, if you're doing something that deals with money, you always deal with decimals because you want to have those a bit of something that's coming over it, because sometimes somebody may have a balance of, let's say, 9.56 shillings and that. So let me talk about the difference by an example. So we can declare something. So this called as declaration. When somebody does something like a float, let's say, let me call it float, because float what? Let me say float the float precision. So this is just a naming. So you can give any name that you want. So if I do this is known as you've just declared something, but you have not initialized. So this is a declaration when it's like this. But once I add an assignment like that, and maybe give, like, I want to do 1f. So we said that to assign a float, you have to have that suffix at the end, 1f or 1f like this, no problem. But I prefer the smaller one, maybe divided by 3f. So this is how we do computation. So we shall be talking about operators that we have, but let me just quickly introduce them. Like we say 1f divided by 3f. So that's the first calculation we'll be having. So we can also have the same thing. Let's say now a double precision. You're having the one, you can say 1d, or you can say 1. Let me just have them as a decimal number. Let's say 1.0, and this is 3.0. So you can use the letter D to mean that that's a double, but also without it still means a double. Then the last one that we shall have is the decimal. The decimal is always more common. So the decimal and the float are most common. So the decimal precision. So how to declare a decimal, by the way, you have to include M. I don't know why. And then you have to divide it by the other 3.0 m. So we want to see, like, what are we going to get out of this. So I'm going to just also print some statements of the same. So say that I cannot take long time, so it's console.writeLine. So the float precision, I'm printing this variable. This also prints the second variable, and this prints the last variable. So let's see from the code what we get. So for this, I'm going to clear, then also run the code. So you see, C# is an easy language, and once you get to like C#, you will be able to like understand more about it. So can you see the output? The float precision has, you see, it's kind of, it's shorter because it is 32-bit. So it's 16-bit, then 32-bit to 128-bit. So this is 16-bit. You see now it has some small values that's added to it. So if you want something that can return this kind of something when maybe you divide or do something, you see this precision is better compared. Now the one in the middle is the double, but the decimal has all the carryings happening to it. So that's the difference between float, double, and decimal. Okay, I think the last one that we want to touch on is the character. So let me comment all of this. So what I'm doing is control, and then so I'm having to control, and we have this inclination. I don't know what how I can call it. It's just a simple that same like how I used to divide. So control with that in your keyboard is going to comment. It's a slash, /. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about a character. So a character, we are told, is 16 bits, and we have some other explanation known as a Unicode, but we are not going to stress ourselves like what's a Unicode. So if you want to understand what's a character, for instance, A is a character, B is a character, C is a character. So by itself, D and to Z is a character. So if I think that's the basic explanation of a character. It's something that's singular. But if we have something, like for instance, if you want to understand what's a string is something, let's say it's a sequence of characters. So the name Kimbo is a string because I'm having K, E, M with these others. This is now a string and this is a character. But how do I use a character? So we use the keyword that we mentioned before. This is a keyword. So I can say my car as a variable name is equals to this A. So you can maybe come here and try out C# and do, let's say, a number 2 without anything. What will happen? So you're getting some error or some red line below it here. So you say cannot implicitly convert int because 2 is an integer to a car. So this is cannot be allowed. So how about somebody can just come in and say, I want to have 2. So this is also possible because when you have something that is enclosed within one, can I call it one bracket or one single quote, that qualifies to become a character. So for this, we can just console by saying console dot writeLine, then my character is not equals to this character that we have, and that's what we're going to get in the console. So now it's time for us to talk about reference type. And before we talk about that, there's these two statements that I've been using. That is console.writeLine, and there's something that always pop up before it. So before we talk about reference types, it will be good for me to talk about it. And then, sorry, you see, I've not talked about a Boolean. Okay, let me talk about a Boolean and then talk about console.writeLine and difference with it with console.write. When we talk about a Boolean, it's something that's either true or false. So for instance, I can say, I want to confirm if somebody is a male or a female. So I can say is male. So is male can either be true or can be false. So for instance, is Kemboy a male? So it will be true. Is Kemboy a female? That will be false. So, and this representation in your computer, a true is 1, and then a false is a 0. So the same will happen when you want to represent something. Let's say if somebody is logged into your system, you'll be storing that as a Boolean. Very nice. So let me now talk about difference between console.writeLine and console.write. So I'm going to do this by taking a user's input and then printing it. Okay. So when I write something like, let's say console.writeLine, let's say hello world. Let me just hover around and see what the let me call it a documentation or the guide that it gives us. When I hover around writeLine, it tells me that it writes a specific string value followed by a current line to terminate. So this means that after I write something, it's going to terminate and just go below it. If I clear the terminal and then run it again, you see after this, there's this space that is left over here. So let me now use the second one known as console dot now write. And for this, I'm going to comment the first one so that you can have only this. So console.write hello world. So let's see what this does. So I'm going to clear, then .NET run. Let's see what it comes in with. You see, after hello world, there's no space that is left. If I have both of them, then try and rerun. You see, okay. So this is because I just followed this with the other one anyway. So this other one, because let me first explain this using this. When you hover around console.write, because if you ever write C# and you want to understand something, you have just to hover around that word and then understand what it does. For this, write specifies a string value, the standard output string, but this one does not leave a line space with it. One last thing before we go is taking a user's input. So maybe you want to greet somebody or You want to get the value of their age. So let's say I want to get somebody's name. You can say that I think now when the Copilot is doing things fast. So let's say console dot write. So should I write or write line? Let me write. So maybe tell somebody, hey, what's your name? So what is your name? So I'm asking that question and leaving a space and then closing it with this. I'm closing my statement by this semicolon. So this will give somebody this question like, what is your name? But the program will terminate. Let's see. You see the program terminated. So I want it to allow somebody to write their name. So I'll just come here and say like, we have to define, let's say something, let's say a string, yeah, a name. So by this, I've declared a name, for instance, but somebody else might just come and say name is equals to, I'll explain what I'm doing, dot read line, then that. So let's try and see what we are trying to do. By this, it's like I'm repeating myself. So I better have this in this format. So you're told that, so first thing you've asked somebody, what's your name? So you want to like pick whatever the user is writing. So if the user says, I am Kemboy, you have to take that Kemboy that he writes over here and store it in a name variable. So whatever comes after let's say declaration over this side, so whatever comes this side is the assignment. So you have to store it somewhere and then you'll be able to access it later on. So what's happening here? So converting nullable types. So this wants me to use this nullable typing and that. But I think as we go forward, I'll be able to explain what nulls are. So C# can have some different behavior, and you might maybe be able to ask yourself what's really happened, and you might leave programming at that point. So you see, I can say console.writeLine hello, and then attach that name that's there over here. But for this, I'm going to nullify. I will be talking about why am I nullifying these things. So let me check on the read line. What is read line? So reads the next line of characters from the standard input stream. Let's now see what happens as I explain what is a read line. Let me clear. And as I clear, I want to rerun the code. So I'll say .NET run. So you see now, what is your name? It just stops at this point. It doesn't close my program. If I say my name is Kemboy, you see now it takes that Kemboy that will be stored in the name variable, and it's now able to print it. Hello, Kemboy. So read line, it kind of like, it gives the compiler like, don't end the program. I want to read something that a user is giving me before you end the program. So that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So let's now proceed to the other. So at this point is where now read line is waiting for you to hit the enter. So if I say my name is Bernard, hello Bernard, very simple. So let's talk about reference types, and then by then we'll end the session. So if I want to create that, so if anybody has a question, maybe in the call, you are free to ask your question. You're not like to wait maybe until I end, maybe, and then you ask. So you can freely ask your question at any time. So at this point, I'm going to click the addition button. So this is like creating a project. So I want to create also another console app. And this console app will have a name known as reference type. So also I'll be quick in this because now I'll have to create several files in it. So here it is. So let me check from my other Explorer, the traditional one. You see now you have the reference types, but I would wish to refresh it so that I can be able to have it in my terminal. So for this, I have to go back. CD means change directory, back. And then ls means to list. And I want to see, you can see now we have the reference type and we have the value type. So now CD to value types, then dot net plan. Just test that everything is working. So the first one, it's here. Okay. So I entered into, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to enter CD to reference types, then dot net run. Dot net run. So the first code that you run always takes some time. Let's just wait for it. But obviously that will execute here. It is hello world. So let me clear and now write some code. So expand it, program.cs, and here we have where we can write that. So okay, reference types. So here we are going to talk the types that include these are like the user defined types that are user mostly defined, but also they're kind of inbuilt in C#. So I'm writing the hierarchy of a program. So I can say a class program. So at that time we were able to just see hello world without like writing all these top level statements. But for this, because I'll be using different classes, so it would be good for me to write the top level statements. So now I'll have a class of person. So we talked last week about object-oriented programming and classes. So it's good to this is person. So on a class, when you're writing, please remember to have it in capital letters, the first word that comes over it. Then I want to name my first person with some attributes or a property. So here comes like a public string name. So we are going to have the getters and the setters, and then also the second one will have the age with these getters and setters. So string must contain nullable values. I think this is because also he wants me to nullify them, but it will be okay when I have a constructor. So constructor is going to help me to kind of give a way on how you can be able to set these values. So just below it here. Yeah. So I have to have a constructor. Let me just constructor. So a constructor, you have to name it. So I'm using the public identifier. So we'll be talking about identifiers when we reach to object-oriented programming again. So person. So you have to name it the same name with the class. The string. We talked about this. So the name is what will be the constructor. So you can have the same names or a different name. For instance, you see I declared a name with capital, but here a name is small letters. So I can say now, I want to reassign saying that. So for this name in the constructor, whatever value I get, please assign it to this name, which is a property. So the same thing will happen with the age and save it. Nice. So after the constructor, I want now to go to the main method that is static void main. So by this is the entry point of our program. This is where now like our program will be executing from. So, and I told you that in the old programming of C#, this was how things were written before removal of the top level statements. So you can still write them, and sometimes you can avoid writing them. But because we are dealing with another class inside another class, it was good for us to have it in this format. So I'm here going to initialize the person. So this is like a reference type because I want to let's say now person1 equals to new person. So I will call this person boy. So Nice. So this is creation of an object. This person one will take all the attributes, will contain the name and the age, and I've assigned them to Camboyan, age of 30. So we can be able to create a second person, and then person 2 is equals to, now I might say like, okay, the person 2 that I'm creating is going to be person 1. So this is called a reference type. Let me now explain like what happens when we are doing this. So person 1 and person 2, in this case, it's the same person because person 1 has the name Gameboy and so that years old. Person 2, I'm saying that person 2 will is the same thing with person 1. So let's see what happens when we try and change something. So can here I want to see some consoles happening. Dot right line. So if we want to, let's say, print everything, I can say here person 1. It's really hectic to typing everything. So person 1 is equals to, yeah, person 1 dot name, age equals to person 1 dot age. So the second one should be the same. The Copilot will going to help me to write this console dot write line person 2. So person 2 dot name is accessing the name of that person, and person 2 dot something. So you see these getters and setters that are helping us to achieve this. So when I say Kimboy is of age 30, I'm assigning it to the constructor. Then the constructor is going to have it assess it to that string. So that's what I'm doing over here. Let's see what it prints up to that point. .NET run. So you could see person 1 Gameboy, person 2 Gameboy, the same thing. But now, have you noticed? You'll be able to notice that modifying person 2 will also modify person 1 because they reference the same object in memory. Let's try and do that, and then we'll see if that's actually what happens. Now that's when we'll understand that a class is a reference type. So I can say now person 2 dot. So person 2 has several things. I can say person 2 dot name. At this point, I can call this person as a name known as, let's say, Bernard. So this is the name of person 2. I've now converted or changed that. So after changing it, let's see what will happen. For that, I'll just need a console dot write line. So I'll use this forward slash or backward slash to kind of differentiate between what we've written after define person 2. So okay, this is slash and then n. So this means that it will be printed in the next line anyway. Okay, so okay, this will be printed. So I want now to print now person 1 and person 2 so that we can see. So console dot write line. Okay. Okay, let me just pick this code from here. Because writing same thing over time. Yeah. So now I'm saying that I want also to print at this point the value of person 1 dot name and person 2 dot name, also age, the same thing, so that we can be able to see after changing person 2's name, will it change person 1's name? So that's what we want to confirm. Let's run. So you can see in the first program, it was Kembai of age 30 for person 1 and person 2. But after modifying person's 2 name, I only changed the name of the second person to Bernard, but you see the first person was changed. So why is this happening? This is because a class is a reference type. So modifying person 2 will also modify person 1 because they reference the same memory. So the memory of a computer, that's how it behaves. So I stored something in memory, let's say of a location address. Let me just make a guess, something like 23 or numbers with certain strings. So this is the memory in location, and I said that person is known as Game Boy, and then I still reference this another person with the same address 234 and call that person Bernard. You see, I'm still referencing the same thing. That's why it kinds of like whatever you alter in one of the memory, it's also the same memory with that one because you are sharing the same thing. Okay, let's now talk about arrays because that's a reference type. Then also we'll talk about strings. And then, yeah, so if we get more time, we'll talk about casting. Casting is also very important. But if we don't find time for casting, we are going to forward that to next week. So I'm going to, let me just write them below here. So let me talk about arrays. So this is just a small introduction into arrays, but we'll be talking about arrays and its own methods. Arrays is very wide. So we'll talk about an integer. So how do I declare an array? So an array of integers or an array that will contain numbers. So you have an array like that, have the two angle brackets. So let's say I want numbers. Let me call this number was 1. So you can initialize them directly saying I want 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then maybe 5. So this is an array of 5 values. So I can also declare a second array called numbers 2, and this I'll reference it to numbers 1. So it's like I'm referencing also the same variable, the same memory location. If this location, the location of numbers 1, I'm saying also numbers 2 will be in the same location. So the same thing that happened to the class will also happen to this. Let's check that. So I'm also writing some console statements. So reference types of an array. So I've said console.writeLine numbers 1 will be string.join. So I'm trying to use this so that I can be able to print. So this is not a normal way to print an array, but I'm using the join methods so that I can be able to print that array. Let's see how it happens. So reference types of an array, you see now person 1, no, numbers 1 and numbers 2, they're printing the same thing, 1 to 5, 1 to 5. So let's change. My VS Code is too large. So let's change numbers 2 and see what happens. Okay. It's also going to copy this comment over here. So modifying numbers 2 will also modify numbers 1. The same way how we did with the class. So numbers 2. Okay, just a minute. Let me pick this call. All right. So I'm sorry for that. So as I'd said, so I'm trying to access some values. So when I say numbers 2 and I give this angle brackets and accessing a value, let's say 0, maybe 1, 2. So when we talk about arrays, we'll be able to talk more about what an array is, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this array, it means 1, it's available in index 0, it is available in index 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So when I say numbers 2 and then want to get the value 0, it means I want to access this 1. And then I'm saying I want to assign that 1 to 13. So I want to console log both the arrays numbers 1 and numbers 2 after changing numbers 2 to 13 and see what happens. So I'm going to clear and run. So this is the array type. Before modifying, you see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But after modifying numbers 2 array, you see it modifies numbers 1 array because it's a reference type. So modifying numbers 2, which references numbers 1, is going to change its value. So let me talk about also a string. So we've talked about a string, so I'm going to say this is going to be a string. So a string, let's say string 1 is equals to, let's say, hello, and terminating it there. So we'll also have string 2. So let me copy that for efficiency of time. So string 2, I'm assigning it to string 1. So it's like I'm referencing to this string 1's value. So also I want to print out the same thing. So I'm saying console.writeLine string 1, and the second point is console.writeLine string 2. So the last part is now I want to modify string 2 so that I can be able to know what if I modify the second string, will it also modify string 1? So also having that code, and this code will be available for you on also GitHub. You'll go to type system and you'll be able to access reference type and value types. So when I say string 2 is equals to world, because at this point string 2 is equals to hello. If I change it to world and then try and print out, we want to know like what will be their values. So let me clear, then run. So you see reference types of a string, it's hello and hello. Okay, wait a minute. Why did I change the second string and it never changed? Wait a minute, let's confirm. String 2 is equals to hello. Yeah, okay, string 1. Okay, which means it doesn't reference to the second one. Okay, so let's check this string 1, hello. I think something with my consoles. Let's check how the consoles are happening. So string 2 goes to world. So this is going to be string 2, string 2. We are having a lot of consoles in my application. I don't know. Is it because I'm over? Let me see what this outputs up to that point. Yeah, after modifying string 2, okay. Now let's now write some code for this. So say console string 1 value. Then I want to write the second one, that is console dot writeLine string 2's value. So that time I was having 3 consoles on the same thing. Let's see how this goes. Okay, then it means strings doesn't happen as a reference value, because at this point, after changing the value of string 2, what happened is that it only the string 2 was the one that changed its value, but string 1 didn't change its value. Anyway, I think it's because whenever you're using a string is always said to be an immutable. I think I've also noted here that changing, let's say, a value of string 2 will get from that point of location. Let's say now the first string 2 over here will be in a location, let's say 2, 3, and 4. But now after referencing it, like in this point will be in location, let's say 2, 3, and 5, or 3, 4, 5. So I think because it's immutable, I cannot be able to change the exact string value and then also get it from the same location. So this means that even though yes, a string is a reference type, I'm referencing it, but now on a different location. That's why we get their values different. Yeah, I think at this point now 9:20. So if I say going to another topic that is typecasting, it would take more time. So allow me that next week we talk about typecasting, like how will I able to change a value, let's say from an integer to a double or a double to an int, changing a string to numbers and that. So it's also very important that when you get something that is, for instance, let's say a number like this is a string but a number in some way. So it's a string in this state, but how can I convert this kind of thing to become a number? So that's called typecasting, and we'll be able to talk about typecasting, and we shall talk also about operators in C#. So after then, it will be easy for us talking about control flow structures and also talking about collections and that. So after that point, allow me to end the session. I know it's been something lengthy, and we've been able to learn something from it. So at this point, I would wish to get anyone having a question, ask it at this point. Anyone having a question, a concern, or anything that you would wish to share? Joseph, I see you from this call, and you were also in the other call last time. So I think also as we proceed to learning C#, there will be a way on how to reward those who are active and from different like sessions. So today I will allow me to I'll be able to reward Joseph with a LinkedIn premium from our previous session because this is the second time, and last time also you had some chance to speak with us. So Joseph, you will have yourself a LinkedIn premium. The other person was Bernard, but I don't know where he has gone today. Okay, I'm waiting for somebody who has a question or any concern. So for Joseph, you will be able to reach out to me through WhatsApp. I'm going to share that premium with you.
Hello. Hi.
Yes. Hello. Hi.
Yeah, this is John Bradley.
Yes, John.
The session was awesome. I've enjoyed it. So now me, I'm between two parts. Okay, we have started learning OOP, object-oriented programming. But now I'm still between choosing C# or Java.
Okay, you're still stuck between the two, like writing C# and Java.
Yeah.
Okay, for this, or probably maybe say C# and Java, they're almost two programming languages that are almost similar. Like for instance, you could see I was like writing of the top level structures and defining them. It was like closely to how somebody is writing Java. But all
Yeah.
these two languages are different because most of them they are used on different cases. For instance, Java is used in enterprise applications because if you see most enterprise applications, they have been using Java. And one thing that made Java to be more popular it was because Java could be able to you could be able to write Java in applications that can maybe Windows application systems and also maybe using in Unix or like any other different application system or OS systems. But coming to C#, C# belongs to .NET family. It took a very long time for C# to adopt other operating systems. So that's why maybe it was kind of like it was a delay for C# to get it famous. But after some time, C# .NET was able to run in different operating systems, and now Writing both C# and Java is something you can go for. So I can't say that you can prefer one than the other. But one advice that I got from somebody is that by using a given language, you're using it because you've seen maybe a marketing or maybe in your location, like the number of people who are writing Java, then maybe the number of people who are writing C#. So you're trying to weigh like, okay, within the companies and within us, so what applications are they writing? Is it marketable for me to do Java, or is it marketable for me to do C#? So for me, I chose to go with C# because the most companies that I am targeting is because I'm targeting they are most using C#.net. So hailing from companies like Microsoft, the companies that we'll be able to interact with, that is the G2 company and Teach2Give. Uh, these are companies that are actively employing C#.net developers. But if you want, maybe you are targeting to go to a company, let's say known as IBM, those people are still writing more of Java. So if you kind of weigh like where you want to get employed, you can see like what code other people are writing. If Java is what they're writing, please go with it. But if your market is somebody that you're aiming in the market are writing C#.net, you can go for it. But both languages are good to learn because on freelancing, you can see both Java and C#.net are quite marketable. So I won't kind of like give you a preference, but something to consider is that you check on maybe where you want to work. That will help you to choose between each.
Okay, thank you, Kemboi. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I've also shared the QR code to our WhatsApp group for anyone maybe you are not in the group and would wish to be there. Yeah, we'll have more conversations on the WhatsApp group, especially if you are stuck somewhere to be cool. So Dennis Munena, you have a question? Can proceed. Is it in the chat? Let me just check on the chat. You've said you have a question. Okay, you're typing. So okay, you came here on a continue. You know, I can't be able to like tell at what time maybe you got in. But if there's something that you missed, we always record these sessions. Like the first session that we did last week, I recorded it, and now I have one YouTube uh, channel that I'm placing them. So it's similar to this. I'm going to download the recording, upload it to YouTube, so that whenever you miss a session, you'll be able to go there, cover it, like I try and get it back from YouTube. So there's no cause of alarm when you get late. So you're going to get this recording over there. And also I shared some links on WhatsApp that's going to help you to navigate so many things. So I shared a link on my GitHub repo of where I'm pushing this code. So if you're good in Git and GitHub, you're gonna go there, download the code, and then you can be able to practice them one-on-one. So the code that I post to GitHub has some notes in it that it explains to you whatever I'm doing in the code. I've also shared the link to the tutorials on YouTube of those advocates from Microsoft that explaining like how other beginners can be able to write C# code. And also I've shared another link of C# foundations from Free Code Camp. So these are certifications that you can be able to do so that you can level up your skills in C#, get certified, and these are the things that you can add into your portfolios and resumes. So this is a series that will be running for quite like 2 months, and in 2 months you'll have gotten yourself the skills of how to write C# code. You can now build projects in it, and very, very, very amazing. So something else I wanted to say is that we are going to have the C# MC.NET config that's going to happen in November 20th. So that's an event that has been given to us by Microsoft that you can be able to host. So by then, people will be able to also to get stickers and some cool stuff. So once we host the C# or the .NET call, so we'll be talking about the new features that .NET is coming with. So we'll be talking about .NET 9, since now we are using .NET 8. And so we're talking about .NET Aspire. So some cool stuff that is coming with C#.NET. So there's so many things that are coming in. So then you're saying, so link, okay. So you'll allow me to get into that. For somebody who has the link to WhatsApp, you can share, because this will mean that I have to open my WhatsApp and then get the link. So anybody else who still has a question, so this is the opportunity. So next week we are going to learn typecasting and operators. Okay, Maurice, you can go ahead.
Okay. My question inquiry on that program that to you like the C does C sharp creating like
I can like get you very well. Like maybe you can be audible like more so that I can be able to get your question right.
okay as in like the C does C sharp creating like dot exe
I umepotea, like I definitely didn't get your question. I've heard you speaking about C# PHP, and then I didn't get the question. Maybe you can type it on the chat, the entire question, and then I can be able to answer. Because from my side, kidogo sikupati.
okay nisha type kwa chat
Okay, oh, hapa. So like C does C# create new files, exe. I'm just curious. Oh yeah, when running C# code, so there's that folder I showed you known as the bin folder. So once you write a program in C#, like hello world program, that is a human readable code. And sometimes there's this process, not sometimes, it's always there's this process of like converting that code from human readable to machine readable. So that conversion requires you to compile that code. So when you compile that code, you have to like create a .exe file or an assembly language. So C# will also create that. Don't know if I'll be able to reshare also the screen. Okay, let me reshare the screen. Maybe you'll be able also to see that. So that file on all other programming languages also does that, even though some other languages might not show you that it has been created. So my screen is now visible. You can confirm with me that it's visible from your side. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay, thank you. So you see this folder known as bin. This is the folder that was created after this folder was created after I run that program .NET run. So when I say .NET run, I'm saying please C# compiler, please start compiling my code. And it started generating this bin folder. If I open the bin folder, you see this debugging happening. So the first thing that a compiler will do is it will compile my code and then debug it. So it's going to generate that .NET 8. Let me click it again. You see this program here. So there are so many things that are happening. Like for instance, the hello.dll. So this is an assembly language, but can you check on this? This is an application. I think if you try and check the type of this application or the properties, this should be an exe file. Will I be able to check that? Okay, it doesn't maybe explicitly say, but once you see something that's an application from these points, this is a .exe file, and that means that C# will output something, and this is what is running by the way. This is like the output of the program, and it is in a machine readable code exe file. So it generates that. So let me get the link to the WhatsApp group. And for anyone who still has a question, okay, let me send that link because I know when I get out of the meeting, maybe we can't get in touch so that I can share the link. So I've copied the link. So in the WhatsApp group, please let's be having these conversations because sometimes maybe somebody is stuck somewhere and you wanted to get some help. I don't know why I can't be able to copy this link. Who can be able to do that? Let me just give me a minute to just get into my device. Okay, or maybe you can just text me, then I'll add you directly because I'm facing some issues copying the link. So yeah, let me share my number over there. So Dennis will be you can chat with me and then I'll add it to the group. So maybe there are no more questions. I'm gonna end the call. So let's meet next week the same time. Okay, bye bye.